thank you guys for joining us this morning. I'm Curtis Roach, Head of Content for iGamingFuture. Really appreciate having you all here today. We are going to be discussing what it really is going to be like growing through regulation, looking at how we as an industry can really navigate through this continually changing environment and still keeping a competitive edge. This is a special one-off session curated by iGamingFuture for SiGMA, so we're very happy to be here today. We don't have much time, but we've got a great panel here, so we're going to allow them to introduce themselves first, and then we'll get straight into the first question. So I'll start with Matt over there, and we'll work our way back over this side.
Thanks, Curtis. Hi, guys. My name's Matthew Curtis. Been working in iGaming for roughly 6 years now in compliance roles, currently the head of RG for LNL Europe. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank you, Curtis, and thank SiGMA for the opportunity to speak today.
Excellent. Andrei?
Good morning. I'm Andrei, lawyer by profession, with a huge passion for legal and compliance matters, cross industries between financial and gaming experience, currently in general counsel role with Playson, one of the upcoming game providers within the industry.
And Dee?
Good morning. I'm Dee Maher. I've been in gambling industry for 12 years. I started in 2010, so I've seen a huge amount of regulation occurring. I'm currently Chief Legal and Compliance Officer with an operator, Genesis Global, who are a multi-brand operator.
Excellent. Tees?
Hello, my name is Buschmann. I am Head of Compliance at Red Rhino Limited. We operate several casinos on the Platin Casino in several jurisdictions, holding several licenses. And as a true compliance guy, I'm the reason for us starting a bit late.
It's fine. Right, so we're getting to the first question. Dee, I'm going to come to you with this one. In recent times across Europe, especially, we've seen a lot of different territories either opening up or re-regulating. And I just wonder, from your point of view, I mean, there's been a strong player protection theme across all of these different updates from the regulatory standpoint. I mean, do you think that the right balance has been struck, especially in compared to market competitiveness?
What can I say? Well, we used to have a one-size-fits-all approach. We had the gold standards of the MGA, Gibraltar, Alderney, and we were able to pick and choose which license we had and provide our offering under their guidelines. But in the 12 years I've been in this industry, regulation has just been transformation. Every single state has adopted its own regulation, which is hard to keep up with. So as an operator, we're going to examining regulation with a shopping list.
Yeah.
We're looking exactly what's in our cupboard and what we need to adopt to meet these regulatory requirements. And it doesn't stop there. It keeps evolving, it keeps changing, and we have to decide whether we're going to meet those challenges or not enter the market.
Right.
So competition-wise, no, I wouldn't say it's a level playing field. Opportunity-wise, there's lots of opportunity if you wish to meet those conformities.
Excellent. Anybody got anything to add to this at all?
Yeah, I will agree with Dee for the majority of what she said. I don't really think in this scale of market competitiveness that a good balance has been struck. Ultimately, it does depend on exactly which market we're talking about. Some are a bit more prescriptive than others. You find a fair amount of arbitrary rules in certain jurisdictions, say, for example, Germany, where their stake bets, their stakes caps, in fact, have undoubtedly pushed people to the black market. On the flip side, they are trying to find somewhat of a mid-ground with things like the €1,000 deposit cap. And so long as the consultations keep happening and they leave room for player freedom, I think that that balance will be struck eventually.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, also I agree to you, Matthew, and I agree to you, Dee, but I think basically finding a balance between competitiveness and I mean, effective player protection is something that is a constant fight because on the one hand, you want to be an attractive casino attracting players. On the other hand, most regulators understand player protection as basically preventing players from playing. So these two things do not really well get together. And there are different approaches throughout the different jurisdictions, which are pretty different actually, while some may have found a balance which is, in a way, is actually attracting players who are vulnerable, while others are so restrictive that the players who are actually the ones to be protected would not even be attracted to play on the to play in their casinos or to play in these jurisdictions, but rather go for offshore casinos where they're completely unprotected. So I guess that's the struggle.
Yeah, excellent. Andrei, anything to add?
Sure. I'm personally a big fan of regulation, and it's quite sad to see that the balance is not struck in some regulated territories. And I believe, in addition to everything that was said, a key component of a successful player protection would be to find the balance between responsibility that lies either on the player, either on the operator. Because in the first years, we've seen a huge responsibility shifted towards the player, and the trend of the newest regulations are showing the opposite. But obviously, finding the balance in between the two would be a key component for a successful player protection.
Excellent. Now, Andrei, we're going to stick with you for the next question. What role does new technology, such as AI, play in the ongoing industry pursuit of complete player protection? How do you see that going forward?
Sure. Artificial intelligence is based on the data that it receives, its functions, and it relies on the data that it receives. So from the player's protection perspective, I can identify two pitfalls. Obviously, a pattern that could be recognized by the players, a pattern that could be exploited by the players. And secondly, a blanket approach that could be actually a blank approach towards a certain group of players that rely on certain similar data. And obviously, the history and the experience showed us that this blanket approach, when it comes to player safety, is not ideal. Going back to my background as a litigation lawyer, I would go to mention judgment as well when it comes to AI and human interaction. And the player protection ethics showed us that there isn't a clear line between black and white. We often find a lot of gray areas when we are talking about player protection, about ethics, about the right way forward. So the inborn human sense of right or wrong will prevail, at least for now, when it is compared to the AI. Then, of course, interacting with players, communication, experience, all these are factors that, for now, the artificial intelligence cannot bring to the table. I'm a big fan of innovation. I very much embrace the artificial intelligence and all the benefits that it brings to the table. But for now and for the foreseeable future, when it comes to player protection, human interaction will be the key to manage a complete and rounded table of measures.
Oh, okay, excellent. Anyone got anything to add to that at all?
Well, I couldn't agree more what you say, Andrei, because I believe that artificial intelligence or technology can be a very powerful tool in order to detect behavioral patterns. But still, pathologic gambling being a behavioral addiction, it would, in the end, at the stage where we are with the technology we can develop these days, at the end, there would have to be a human being which puts all these things together, I believe. So in the first step, for some kind of monitoring and some kind of flagging, it may be a powerful tool, but without human interaction, it can't work effectively. That's what I believe.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think AI is wonderful. Technology can enhance the user experience, but it can also detect algorithms of change in patterns of behavior, and then produce some results, an action point for the operator, for their staff to take action and to try educate customers of the use of responsible gambling tools as well.
Yeah.
So rather than hinder progress, encourage them, teach them, educate them on how to moderate their gambling if there's signs of potential harm from their normal behavior.
Okay, brilliant.
I totally agree with everything that has been said already. AI, I will keep this brief. AI is a supplementary tool, in my opinion. It should always be used in conjunction with a human element. It does have the capacity to analyze data en masse. So the amount of human or manual reviews that it would take to determine the risk of a customer based on behavioral patterns, like you guys have said already, could more easily be done via AI. The only issue I see with AI in its current format, it being a newer entry to the iGaming world, is that based on machine learning, it needs time to develop. So it makes sense that the industry takes hold of this as quickly as it can to make best use in the near future.
Definitely. And again, Matt, I'm going to stick with you on to the next question as well, because historically, the majority of RG, and maybe you can talk from your experience in this too, but historically, the majority of RG regulations and restrictions have had quite a strong monetary focus. Going forward, do you think our industry should be focusing more on behavioral type issues, or how do you strike the balance? What's your thoughts on that?
Outside of the financial markers that you mentioned,
Yeah.
vulnerability and behavioral markers are pretty much all that's left in the RG arsenal to identify potential problem gambling. If you are to take a look at the most recent update to the UK Gambling Commission's guidance 3.4.3, that is a bit more prescriptive with what they would like you to focus on with regards to behavioral markers. And I think, yes, going forward, that's going to be more and more the case. On the flip side, I do have to go out on a limb and say that until a regulator starts to penalize operators for missing or not accounting for behavioral markers, I don't see that really being reflected too much in the operators' practices themselves. If you were to take a look at all of the public statements and penalties listed recently by the Gambling Commission, it's always written in financial terms. You never read, this customer exhibited these traits. You read, customer X lost X amount of money, so we've implemented this. So I think it's a bit of give and take with both the operator and the regulator to make sure that those behavioral markers are completely enforced and not just skirted around in the sense of other financial markers.
Brilliant. You want anything to add to this?
I would say it's only one factor, and it can't be one size cap fits all.
Yeah.
People can raise their limits, but it's like applying for a mortgage. You have to submit all kinds of documentation. It has to go to a committee. It has to be analysed. It has to review. It has to be constantly monitored. People rebuke that, and there's a chance that they'll go to the black market, and that's growing. We all know that's growing because of over-regulation in that market. So I think we need to be clever, work on the affordability limits correct, enhance player protection methodology and interactions, and use other philosophies rather than just monetary limits in order to enhance the player protection feeling, trust, reputation, and reward in this industry.
Is there a perfect ratio, 50-50?
Perfect ratio? I don't know. I don't think if I had that answer. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's a balance of a number of factors, and having individual traits, exhibiting them, using the tools like AI, informing, having enhanced player protection, not limiting activity, because the real people who enjoy gambling, if they're limited, they will go elsewhere, and maybe not always to regulated sites, and therein lies the problem.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, I also think that focusing too strong on the monetary side is basically changing the cause and the effect, because basically pathological gambling is a behavioral addiction. There is no question about it in science. And the effect of it is that people lose money and basically their life goes down the drain because they cannot control themselves. But the pure fact that someone spends money on gambling and possibly spends money on gambling in a way that others would not find convenient or whatsoever can only be one indicator. But I believe that from a scientific perspective, we should focus much more on the behavioral patterns, because it can be that someone who spends 100 euros or 100 pounds on a website on gambling can be detected to be a problem gambler, while someone else living in the same economic circumstances spends 1,000, but he doesn't have a gambling problem. So we should focus on that much more, I believe, because otherwise we are just being paternalizing the players, and as you just said, these will go to the black market and can't be protected anymore.
Interesting. Andrei, anything to add to that?
Sure. Just to conclude, we were talking about AI and human interaction being complementary. It's the same with the financial and affordability patterns that are being complementary with behavioral patterns. My colleague was saying about the new trend in regulations. We've seen a clear indication that the regulation is putting more and more accent on the behavioral patterns, and of course things like account activity, interactions led by the player, or I don't know, a big win, the behavior after a big win or a big loss will actually round up the best player protection measures, obviously keeping in mind the financial and the affordability indices.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got time for this one more question. I'm going to come to you for this one, Tees. I mean, we've spoken about some of the different regulations that we see across Europe, and some of them have been controversial, more controversial than others. I mean, how can operators and regulators work better together to create more relevant, or the most relevant and the most practical frameworks going forward? Is there a good way forward for that kind of cooperation?
Well, I'm starting with naming the issue as I see, because I believe the problem is that most regulators have an own view about responsible gaming.
Right.
Some have a quite scientific approach, some have a quite, let me say, common sense approach, which is from a scientific perspective possibly quite poor. So it would start with finally understanding on a broader level what responsible gambling actually means and what it actually is, and what needs to be and how players need to be protected. So I think the key is coming to a better communication, a better exchange. In most regulations, it's still that basically player protection is the enemy of the operators, and so this should change. And so I believe the first key is coming to a mutual understanding. Second key is better communication, and third key is also involving science, because that is what, at least in some regulations, doesn't happen at all. And I believe that's a major problem. And if we could bring all these things together, so and possibly involve scientific organizations rather than ideological organizations, what happens in many jurisdictions, is something that could help a lot to really improve, protect the vulnerable players, because that's, of course, something that we as operators, we all want, because it also strengthens our brand, and it strengthens our standing towards our players, toward the regulators and the market. So we all have a mutual interest, but we are just not coming to the point where we all actually can follow it. So get lost in the battle, that's my opinion.
Excellent. Any other thoughts?
Yep, completely agree with Tees. I think it's a combination of research with regards to why those particular rules are being considered, in combination with open consultations, as I've already mentioned. With regards to the UK Gambling Commission and their regulations specifically, I think they're doing a pretty good job now with making everything quite evidence-based. And when you have the context for it, things make a lot more sense. That being said, we're both guilty of leaning on the black market as an in and out for a lot of reasons. I think the Gambling Commission view operators as using the black market as some kind of a deflection from having to do the things that they would like us to do, whereas from the operator's side, we feel like they're not taking that claim seriously until they generate some research on whether our claim is unfounded or not. That's going to continue happening, and there's going to be a bit of a brick wall there in between us really finding that balance and working together.
Excellent. Dee, Andrei?
Totally agree. I think collaboration is key between both the regulators and the operators, the license holders. Without collaboration, how do they understand our business? How do they understand the changing mindset of individuals? So communication, collaboration, regular meetings, regular opportunities, so that they can get to understand what our challenges we face every day, and so that we are not bombarded with new regulation that we don't pretty much understand how we're going to achieve those goals.
Yeah.
So I think a greater collaboration on both sides is paramount.
Excellent.
Yeah, I will continue on the same line of thoughts, and I remember with great joy the days when the compliance assessments were done from a collaboration perspective, and it was great. It was much easier to implement all the measures, all the regulations. It was much easier to explain internally inside the companies how the regulation actually helps in developing and staying sane. So actually going out of the sphere of player protection, I would see a key element of a better collaboration, even the acknowledgement of of the in-house roles of legal and compliance. We are individuals who care about doing things right. So if the authorities will acknowledge more and will have a better collaboration, a better understanding of how we can develop things from inside, and they will understand that the grilling or the tight deadlines or some actions actually pointed towards the legal and compliance professionals are very harmful, and the right approach would be like I've seen it back in the days, a more sustainable collaboration.
Excellent. We've probably got about just over 2 minutes left. Do we have any questions from the audience at all? Any hands raised? No? Okay. Well, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you guys very much for joining us. I'd just like to end by saying, if you guys are very interested in this sort of content, please check out iGamingFuture.com. We have a lot more content like that on there, so feel free to check it out. But after that, just help me give the panel a round of applause. Thank you.